Mike's Daily Podcast.
Episode 1391, 1391, just 9 away from 1400. And I am Mike Matthews, broadcasting from Café Anyway, located somewhere in Podcastro Valleyton today, where it is going to be so hot. And we're having a monsoon in California. How cool is that? Today, we have Shelly Schuhart, Floyd the Floorman, John Deere the Engineer,
Mike's Daily Podcast,
and the news segment, Now That's Legit, where we'll get to some things that are legitimate, I guess.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Although you may be illegitimate, who am I to judge on certain things? I will not budge, like going to the shoe store and buying new shoes. That was a band in the 80s, New Shoes, and they had that song called I Can't Wait Till My Baby Comes Around. And
Mike's Daily Podcast.
I can't wait. They also had You're Taking Me to the Point of No Return. Wait,
Mike's
there was a couple songs
Daily
that had Point of No Return in it.
Podcast.
In the 80s, I know.
Yeah!
Now discovered that were sung by female pop bands. But New Shoes was an awesome band. It was just a guy and a girl. Jeff Lorber was the guy. I can't remember the woman's name. But Jeff Lorber had been a big jazz artist, fusion jazz artist dude. Hey! Look who walked in! Hello, Mike Matthews. It's Shelly Schuhart, gift shop supervisor. Why do you talk about the 80s all the time? I mean, 80s music was kind of interesting. I was a teenager in the 80s, so I remember a lot of it. You always remember the music when you were a teenager the most. Look who else walked in. Oh, Mike, this is Floyd the Floorman! And this is John Deere the Engineer. It's so scary. Mm-hmm. Why is it scary?
And here's today's podcast picture.
Because that podcast picture comes zooming through here with those jets on it. Well, you made the podcast picture sounder thing, and you put jets on it because you're an engineer and you did that. Oh, yes, I did. The podcast picture is from yesterday when I walked Basil, the boxer, at the wonderful, what was it, Heron Bay. I think they also call it the Hayward Regional Shoreline. And there's actually, I got a couple of really good pictures of Basil, but I don't have them in this picture. It's just, there's this pier. There are all these kind of these decrepit old, you know, the bits of post out there in the water and that go into the bay there in San Leandro, San Lorenzo, Hayward. And they once were like all these factories in this area, a lot of dynamite factories around the bay. I know there was one there in San Leandro where Heron Bay is now, which is interesting because here you have once a factory that built destructive materials, dynamite, destructive product. And then now it is a bird preserve. And nature preserve and animals and birds are preserved in this area. They're allowed to do what they want. You can't go in there. You have to stay out. It's really nice, but people can walk and it's beautiful. And I like this view of the old piers that are kind of fading away. That's why I like going up to Benicia. There's a lot of old piers and stuff up there and history. And this pier, as you see in this podcast picture, goes out. Actually, it's right in the area in Hayward where they have this, or San Leandro, San Lorenzo, where they have this water treatment plant. And it goes out as they're processing all the poop and whatnot. And there is a picture but it's the sun was setting and we have this monsoon thing going on. So there's all kinds of wild stuff going on with our cloud situation up in the sky and the sun was setting. And by the way, I didn't get a picture of it. I don't have the podcast picture up for today, maybe in the future, but I did take a picture of it. It was beautiful. The sun set right behind San Francisco yesterday, and it was fascinating. And it's odd because depending on where you are in the bay, it won't necessarily be setting behind San Francisco. On Friday night, I saw it set behind Mount Tamalpais, which was interesting. But there's all kinds of... see the sun. And the thing is, if you're at the beach this time of year, you won't see the sun set actually over the ocean. It sets into the clouds, and sometimes you can't even see the sun because it is so overcast. But that's my little travelogue for you about the Bay Area and about our monsoon and our hot heat and the weird storms happening inland in the Sacramento Valley at this time. But I do love the 80s, and I like the 90s too. I like just about every era of music. But what was most interesting to me about the 90s was music videos were still all the rage. Of course, 80s music videos were huge. Music videos really took off in 1982's when MTV launched. I think I got that year right. And it was actually helped by Michael Nesmith of the Monkees, the tall one, the quiet one. He who had a country career, solo career after he left the Monkees. He whose mom invented Whiteout. He used to save all these videos, music videos that bands were making. They would do it. It's sort of the natural progression if you make music and you have easy access to cameras, and you run around with a lot of in the music world. You end up making friends with people in the art world, in the camera world, movie world, Hollywood, etc. And people were making music videos, and he was grabbing a hold of all these music videos. And so when MTV was launched, he had a lot of the music videos that they were playing over and over and over again. And the Buggles, Video Killed the Radio Star, becoming this huge music video in the early days. The song featured Trevor Horn on vocals, and then Trevor Horn moved from that band into the band Yes, the rock band that had lost their lead singer, John Anderson. He had decided to move on. And so Trevor Horn took over, and he and the keyboardist, it was just him and the keyboard player, Jeffrey Downs. They played in this band, the Buggles. And then they both moved on to Yes. They were in the band Yes for one album called Drama. And then there was a guy named Trevor Rabin from South Africa who had become a huge pop star in South Africa. He was like this guy. He was a rocker. He was sort of a Rick Springfield, good-looking guy. If you know who Rick Springfield is, if you were alive in the 80s, you know who Rick Springfield is. And he was this pop rock artist out in Australia, but he wanted to make his move into rock music in England. And he met up with several of the members of Yes. There was Chris Squire, the bass player of Yes, the recently departed Chris Squire. And there was who was the drummer? Alan White and a couple other guys, and said, hey, let's create a band called Cinema. And they were working on music, and they had this song, Owner of a Lonely Heart, dun dun. Owner of a broken heart. And they wrote and made this whole album, and they got Trevor Horn, who was of the Buggles and recently of Yes, to produce it. He said, hey, I like this sound, Trevor. He actually co-wrote the song Owner of a Lonely Heart with Trevor Rabin. So the two Trevors, Trevor Horn, Trevor Rabin. And then John Anderson, Chris Squire said, hey, listen to some of the stuff we're doing with this new band I'm creating called Cinema. And John Anderson goes, this sounds great. I want to sing on it. And Chris Squire's like, well, if you're on it and I'm on it, we're basically Yes. So they created the band Yes again. And this time they had their biggest album to date with 90215, 90125. I forget what it is, but I have it and have heard it over and over and over again throughout my life. Now, what next happened with Trevor Horn, who produced that album, he produced all this other stuff. Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Relax, don't do it. That's Trevor Horn. And look him up on YouTube and listen to his interviews, because it's really interesting to hear sonically how he thinks. He created one of the first, what was it called? Not the Buffalo Soldiers, but something like that. That was like a big rap album. He made a rap album with this artist who ended up dying pretty young in England. He was huge in England, but not really that big here. So there you go. I went on a little tangent, but what my point was, the 90s had music videos that really, they tried to make it look nice. 80s, usually the videos, well, there was a time in the late 80s that they started to get really fancy and Love Was a Battlefield with Pat Benatar, featured her doing some dancing. There was a lot of dancing involved, even with people that shouldn't be dancing, like Pat Benatar, who was more of a rocker. And you had interesting storylines coming into it. Pat Benatar also had that song Shadows. We're running with the shadows of the night. And that included a big, I think it was a World War II storyline. But then in the 90s, you have the Smash Mouth, you have Fastball, and you have a band called Len. And if you remember any of those bands, those music videos included lots of reflected sun. If you've done some filming, if you've done some photo work and you're outside, you know that sometimes, I don't know what they call it, it's this big reflector thing people get, and they use it to reflect the sun onto the subject, whoever it is, a person. And when you have sunglasses on and the sun is being bounced into your face, and you've got that high, is it contrast? You get that nice big bright white sunbursts going on in your picture. That was happening a lot in music videos. Lots of sunglasses in the music videos of the 90s. Of course, in the 80s, you had Corey Hart wearing his sunglasses at night, but there seems to be this style. If you look back at 90s music videos of that, lots of beach, lots of sun, and it lends itself to where we are now in the summertime, in the summertime, where the monsoons are happening. That's all I wanted to talk about. That, and if you'd like to check out the website, mikesdailypodcast.com, and see all the past podcast pictures, mikesdailypodcast.com, and there's also a link to the Amazon rainforest, or actually the Amazon shopping website. Click on that and buy whatever it is you're going to buy, and that helps us out if you go through mikesdailypodcast.com. And also you can help out through the PayPal donation there, and you'll get a special personalized MP3 for thee from all of the Café Anyway characters. All that, mikesdailypodcast.com. And now we have a little segment called...
Now that's legit.
And now we return you to our regularly scheduled program with Mike Matthews.
That is legit, is what this is. This is legit. And we begin with some news about, well, the healthcare thing. The two leading health insurer trade groups sent a strongly worded letter on Friday expressing opposition to a controversial conservative provision included in the latest GOP Obamacare replacement bill. America's Health Insurance Plans and Blue Cross Blue Shield Association warned that the provision from Ted Cruz, the senator from Texas, who is a Republican and a nut, would mean premiums will skyrocket for people with pre-existing conditions, said these two huge health insurer trade groups, and, quote, millions of more individuals will become uninsured. The letter expresses opposition to a provision included in the new GOP repeal bill that would allow insurers to sell plans that do not meet Obamacare regulations, including the ban on discrimination based on pre-existing conditions, if they also sold plans that did meet the requirements. Conservatives argue this move would allow younger, healthier people to buy cheaper plans. The insurers and many health experts warn that only sick people, there may be more than 6 of those sick people, but they would remain in the more expensive, more generous Obamacare plans, leading to premium spikes for people with pre-existing conditions. This would allow the new plans to cherry pick only healthy people from the existing market, making coverage unaffordable for the millions of people who need or want comprehensive coverage, including, for example, coverage for prescription drugs and mental health services, says the letter. And I would just like to bring this back to Ted Cruz. Does that guy do anything right? He is a freak. I don't like him. I'm so glad he didn't win the Republican ticket and get to be our president, because that guy scares me. There's something weird going on with him. Am I wrong? I might be wrong. You can let me know at 336MM Daily. That's the phone number, 336MM Daily. And if you like Ted Cruz, tell me why. But seriously, what's happening with that dude? And he's younger than me. I don't get that either. The Senate will delay votes on a bill to dismantle the Affordable Care Act because of John McCain. Wait, what? Oh, yeah. So we'll get into this in a moment, but Mitch McConnell announced last night there's a new obstacle to winning enough support for one of Republicans' most cherished goals. He said the Senate would defer consideration of the bill scheduled for this week because John McCain, the senator from Arizona, will be absent, recovering from surgery that he had on Friday to remove a blood clot from above his left eye. John McCain is indestructible. This dude has been through a lot. And now a blood clot has been removed from above his left eye. Yeesh. Well, McConnell has said that he wanted to begin debate on the bill and pass it this week using special fast-track procedures, but without McCain, Senate Republicans would not have the votes they need to take up or pass their bill to repeal and replace major provisions of the Health Care Act. It was unclear how long the delay will be. The leader has not announced a date for the Senate to take up the legislation, said an aide to Mr. McConnell. Then let us look at a Hyperloop. What the hell's a Hyperloop? Hyperloop 1 this week announced that it completed the first full-scale test of its high-speed transportation system, a move the company hailed as the burgeoning technology's Kitty Hawk moment. The test vehicle only reached 70 miles per hour, a tenth of the company's eventual target speed. But the firm felt assured enough to set another phase of testing for later this year when they hope to reach 250 miles per hour. Eventually, the system could reach a top speed of 700 miles per hour, nearly the speed of sound. The Hyperloop's potential velocity has helped it captivate the public's imagination ever since Tesla and SpaceX and dreamy CEO Elon Musk popularized the concept back in 2012, that long ago. But the proposed system, a sort of high-speed train that uses aerodynamic pods propelled through a vacuum cylinder, is not just about speed. It's about changing how we think about moving people and cargo, which is a $1.48 trillion industry in the United States alone. Musk has it as an he has open sourced the idea. The implications tie back to the founding vision that we've had of turning cities into metro stops, changing the meaning of where you live and where you work, unlocking economic opportunity in areas that might be currently locked away by a lack of infrastructure or lack of transportation solutions. Hyperloop One co-founder Shervin Pishavar said. Other companies like Hyperloop Transportation Technologies and Arrivo are working on their own designs. And this is all according to Fortune magazine. Speaking of Elon Musk, he was talking yesterday, and he warned bipartisan gathering of U.S. governors that government regulation of artificial intelligence is needed because it's a fundamental risk to the existence of human civilization, said Elon Musk. I caught a little bit of this on C-SPAN yesterday. But first, he asked for some governors to lift a different kind of regulation, state franchise dealership laws that ban the direct sale of his company's electric cars to consumers. Musk spoke broadly about solar energy, space travel, self-driving cars, and other emerging technology during a question and answer session at the conference in Rhode Island of the National Governors Association. A bunch of governors there He also met privately with some governors, including Louisiana Democrat John Bel Edwards, who recently signed a law that Musk's Palo Alto, California-based company says blocks it from selling cars there. Edwards said Tesla asked for the one-on-one meeting with Musk, which was short. I just asked him to come down to Louisiana and sit down with the Louisiana Automobile Dealers Association and work out some sort of compromise, which they have successfully done in other states, said Edwards. Allowing manufacturer to consumer sales also came up in meetings between Musk and two other governors, Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo, she's cute, and Connecticut Governor Daniel P. Malloy. Representatives for the two Democrats confirmed they had private meetings with Musk, and the topic came up. Yes, he was talking all about the artificial intelligence and how it's just incredible. It's just accelerating how quickly artificial intelligence can learn and excel at things. He's really worried. And finally, our Facebook, your Facebook, my Facebook. I'm at facebook.com/Mike's Daily Podcast, by the way. For much of history, the only way to chronicle life was to write about it. Now, many of us take selfies on our smartphones to share on Facebook and create picturesque albums of our daily meals on Instagram, which then gets posted on Facebook. And as the mediums we use to recall and review the past change, so do our memories. Now, this is fascinating to me. I don't really look so much at my past. Oh, yeah, I guess I do. I look at my past Facebook pictures because Facebook has that memory thing now where they go, hey, this is what happened to you 5 years ago or 4 years ago. Here's your day in history. And you look back at it and you'll see comments underneath some of your posts. Comments by people that may be dead, comments from people that you may not talk to anymore because you had a falling out or you got a divorce or whatever. And it's fascinating because you're seeing a piece of your own history and you kind of think back, now, why did things change? How did things change? Are they changing for the better? Are they changing for the worse? What's happening in my life? What's going on? The unexamined life is not worth living. Daniel Schachter, a psychology professor at Harvard University, this according to Quartz, first established the effects of photographs on memories back in the 1990s. In one experiment, he showed that it was possible to implant false memories by showing subjects photos of an event they could have conceivably experienced, but they did not. In another, he found not only did looking at photos boost the memory of that particular event, but also impaired memories of events that happened at the same time and were not featured in the photographs. The primary focus of Schachter's lab is on how memories relate to other cognitive abilities. His research has shown that weaknesses in our memory are positive attributes in allowing us to think meaningfully about the future. Wow. So when I look back at those pictures through my Picasa program that I downloaded onto my computer like almost 10 years ago, and I see pictures from 10 years ago, I'm actually sculpting, maybe in an adverse way, my own history and my own life. Maybe I shouldn't look at my pictures at all. No. I'm going to keep looking at them. It's fun. You know what? That's an interesting. Here's how I feel about that. I think you really, you should look at pictures from your past. And if you are, I think it can't really block out things. I think it only unlocks other things that happened. If you look back at a particular day, let's say from a wedding. I was looking back at pictures of a wedding that happened 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago to the date. And I remembered it was unlocking all kinds of things that, oh yeah, that happened. There was this really hot bridesmaid that was there that I talked to, etc. And, I had blocked all that, partially because I was married at the time. And I was like, oop, I can't talk to this hot bridesmaid because I'm married and my wife will get jealous. That kind of thing. Photographs have the potential to distort memory, he says. When we threw in photographs of events that could have happened within the sequence but didn't, they would become a false memory. To put that in a real world context, says Quartz, excessive scrolling through photos from a party last year could make you swear you remember Harry's terrible late night karaoke when in fact you went home at 9 p.m. This is where I'm disagreeing with this article. I'm disagreeing with this, but maybe you agree. There's also a phenomenon called retrieval-induced forgetting. Photographs cannot just remind us of events, but determine which events we forget. If you go on vacation and review photographs for certain events of that vacation, it's also the case that the related things you don't review may be harder to remember. Like I say, I do not agree with that. In fact, I have looked back at pictures, maybe did not remember a specific event that also happened that day. But then when you go to sleep at night and your subconscious comes alive and you have dreams and whatnot, you are remembering that I have remembered stuff that have happened in that day that I didn't take a picture of. So that is apparently not brought into this article at all, but I think there is something to say about the subconscious, very powerful part of our brains. When everyone poses merrily at a festive dinner, that's the image of the night that will most likely linger in memories, while the washing up afterwards, argument with your spouse on the way home, or miserable hangover the next day will fade. But is that a bad thing? I don't know. Lots of this article written by Olivia Goldhill, you can read and see if you agree or disagree with it as you go outside with me of Café Anyway. We're bringing Mike's Daily Podcast somewhere in Podcaster Valley. Memories fade, but the what still lingers? I forget. That's a Tears for Fears song. The hurt still lingers? Probably The Hurt, because they called the album The Hurting. So that was the one right before Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Anyway, Schachter's whole thing, Dr. Schachter. Hey, that rhymes. It's a poem, Dr. Schachter. He says, with people doing this more and more, there's the likelihood of resculpting the past in ways that promote the things that are on Instagram or elsewhere, but make it less likely to remember related things that don't make it into the online depository. And he notes one aspect of memory that makes us susceptible to fake news online, that is, source information is a particularly vulnerable area of memory. We often have trouble remembering just where we learnt a particular piece of information. Online, this means we could easily misremember a news story from a dubious source as being from a more credible publication. Well, that's interesting. I agree with that. Social media may shape which memories we remember, but it's not clear whether it'll make our memories worse. It's entirely possible that we're mindlessly scrolling through past albums, relying on photos to recreate our memories, and becoming lazy in our ruminations about the past compared to in the days when we had an old diary or letters to read through. But it's also possible that looking through so many photos is encouraging us to remember old events more often. The way social media shapes our memory could end up having knock-on effects for other mental habits. All those hours on Facebook could change not just what we do with our time, but how we think. Well, I hope you've thought or had some time to think, and maybe I've given you some food for thought. Maybe it's a monsoon of thought for you today, but that's what we do on the Sunday show. And it's been fun. It's a blast. Hey, I might do a millennial Mike excursion today if you'd like to join me. Where am I going to be? I have no idea. Now, let's save the millennial Mike excursion for sometime this week, because I thought I might go up to Benicia today, but I think it might be too hot. I was going to look at deteriorating piers in the bay, but it might be too hot there. I'll figure something out. I'll be somewhere in the Bay Area. Look for me somewhere in the Bay Area. There we go, with the wonderful Basil the Boxer. Next show, it'll be Benita the Disgruntled Fiddle Player and the Brewmaster. Thanks for listening. And thanks for joining me at Café Anyway.
Anyway.
Hey, Why haven't I been invited to any pool parties yet this summer? I forgot to ask that question. Why? Invite me to your pool party, 336MM Daily, 336MM Daily. Give me a call. Invite me to or you can email me at mikesdailypodcast@gmail.com. Ariel's about to tell us that wonderful email address again. So invite me to a pool party and have fun at your pool party. We should put a pool out here outside of Café Anyway. Dang it.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at mikesdailypodcast.com. Email Mike now at mikesdailypodcast@gmail.com.